Hello, welcome back to this YouTube channel. Um, yeah, last class we introduced ourselves to the concept of real and nominal exchange rate. We talked about how it worked, how the nominal exchange, what's the nominal exchange rate was, how it worked, how it works, right? Then we look at the exchange rate regimes, using graphs and analysis, whatever. We talked about who are those that are interested in exchange rates, and I think, yeah, what determines the exchange rate? I think those are the things we did. Besides, you had an assignment to work with. So today we'll be looking at the real exchange rate. So the real exchange rate is just talking about it's measuring like the purchasing power of the nominal exchange rate. So the real exchange rate is looking at, okay, unlike the nominal exchange rate that I'll be talking about, how much of a paper currency of a country exchanges for the paper currency of another country. So the real exchange rate is looking at how much goods um, of a country's currency must be sacrificed to get how many goods of another countries. All right, so it's just like it's talking about real terms. Okay, just like you have the difference between um, nominal wage and real wage. Real wage talking about the purchasing power of a nominal wage. When you take this money to the market, what can it buy given the inflation rate? All right, so the same thing, exchange rate is the real exchange rate is all about, okay, this exchange rate. So what is it going to get me given the inflation rate in a country or in the two countries that are transacting with each other? So the real estate rate brings into consideration the price level, right, in different countries. And if there is inflationary pressure, it brings those things in, right, and then looks at, okay, how does it actually affect the goods that must be sacrificed to exchange, you know, some other goods, or to goods that you must sacrifice to get this good in another country. Right. So for your definition, the real exchange rate is the price of domestic goods relative to the price of foreign goods. It is the rate at which commodities exchange for one another in different countries. So you're not just talking about the money nominal exchange rate right now. So like you're looking at differences in purchasing power, right, of currencies. Right. So like the in real terms, what would this currency afford in the US? What would this naira afford in the US? And in real terms, what would the US dollar afford in Nigeria? Alright, so the real exchange rate is giving us the nominal exchange rate multiplied by the domestic price level divided by the foreign price level. So we need three pieces of information to get the real exchange rate. So we must have the nominal exchange rate, you must have the domestic price level, which you can capture using various means. Like you can have the CPI, GDP deflator, or whatever measures that have been put in place to like capture the price level of a country. And then you also need the foreign price level. So once you have these three pieces of information, then you can get your real exchange rate. And so let's look at this. An example. An example in a situation where looking at two examples of thereabouts. So we have to look for the real exchange rate in a situation where 1.2 naira, is it 1.2? Yeah, 1.2 naira exchanges for $1. So you have 1.2 naira, 1. No, 1.2, this is naira. 1.2 naira is exchanging for $1, right? And the price level in Nigeria, let's say it was measured by the CPI. CPI in Nigeria is 120, and then CPI, let me say CPI in Nigeria, CPIN, and then CPI in the US is measured as 83.3. Is it 3.3 or 100? Okay, it's 3.3. So what then is the real exchange rate of the naira to the dollar? So it's just going to be 1.2 of the naira, so 1.2 multiplied by the domestic exchange rate is the domestic price level is 120 divided by the foreign price level is 3.3. Like that's all. And the real exchange rates is going to give us 1.73, which means in real terms we need 1.73 naira to get something worth of $1 in the US. Whereas if you just look at the nominal exchange rate, it is still 1.2 naira to $1. But because of the price level, right, of the different countries now, so you are realizing that Nigerians will need much more naira in real terms to get a dollar denominated products, right, from the US or in the US. So next, we what if you have a situation where the CPI in Nigeria increases to 150? So if the CPI, let's say there was a situation where CPIN is now equal to 150. So basically, this is saying that there is inflation in Nigeria, and then if you want to calculate the inflation rate from your previous classes in economics, that will be the percentage change in the CPI, right? So you're looking at the percentage, yeah, change in the CPI. So that's 150 minus 120 over 120 times 100 over 1, and inflation rate is going to be 25%. Let's say it was year-on-year inflation. So between last year and this year, Nigeria's economy is experiencing a 25% inflation rate. Now, how does that affect the real exchange rate? So the real exchange rate, the second time, RER, real exchange rate is now going to be the nominal exchange rate is still 1.2. So you have 1.2 multiplied by, instead of 120 now, we have 150 divided by 83.3. When we sort this out, we're getting 2.16. So in real terms, 2.16 equals $1. One $1. So while the nominal exchange rate is saying 1.2 naira is equal to $1, right now in the real sense of it, $1 is actually equal to 2.16 naira due to the inflation that has happened in Nigeria, right? Due to a 25% inflation in Nigeria. So naira is going to worth less in real terms than the dollar. So like that is exactly what is happening here. All right. At least we can see a relationship between the real exchange rate and inflation rate. So if you are experiencing inflation in your country, your real in real terms, your currency is going to be growing weaker against other currencies that are not experiencing inflation at all, or an inflation up to the level of inflation that you're experiencing in your country. But if the price level in different countries remain the same, right, there's not going to be any change to the real exchange rate at all. So it's because 120 changed to 150, that's why there's a change here. So if it remains the same, like there's not going to be any difference, at all. And then if they were the same value, so let's say this was 120, this was 120, the nominal exchange rate would be the same thing as the real, exchange rate. So what then might be the implication of inflation in your country? Now, if there is inflation in your country, you know, especially cost push inflation, that inflation is going to be inflation is the increment in price level of goods and services. So which means that the commodity that your country is selling to export to other countries would now sell at higher prices due to inflation in your country. And once your country's products begin to sell at higher prices, it reduces the competitiveness in the market, right? Because people would be needing to pay more for your product. Now your products are going to get more expensive to buy than it used to be, and then exports might reduce. So when your country is experiencing inflation, it has a way of increasing the price. There's going to be an increase in the prices of the goods that you are offering on the international market, and then it may actually cause a reduction in export revenue, right? So countries must, inflation is a whole lot of things. So country must work on what do you call it? Ensuring that they have a low and stable inflation, rate. We've had classes on inflation, so I think that shouldn't be difficult if you've gone through them before. But yeah, this is everything we've got on the real exchange rate. Maybe for now, and then what we just have to play with is a small assignment. Don't worry, it's not going to be as tedious as the last one. I promise. So the assignment says that question one. Suppose that 1,300 equals 1 yuan, the currency spent in China. So I'm not actually very sure if that symbol is correct. I hope it is, and if it isn't, please forgive me. All right, so Nigeria's CPI is 131.42, and China's CPI was 78.24. That should be is 78.24. So calculate the real naira calculate the real naira to yuan exchange rate. And number two, if the implicit price deflator of Nigeria is 133 and Ghana's is 82.4, given that the real exchange rate is 9.5 cedis to 1,000 naira, which is actually true right now, right? So what is the nominal naira to cedis exchange rate? Then three, discuss the importance of the real exchange rate. Like, why should we be bothered about the real exchange rate? Why not just leave it at the nominal exchange rate? So thank you very much. This will be our bus stop on exchange rate for now. So if anything comes up in the future, so be it. Bye. Take care.